me out.
The best pyro musicals are only as good as the unique effects that bring them to life, right? And the best effects come from minds that take real pride in the way that their products captivate an audience. Washington State's Pyroland Fireworks takes immense pride in designing unique effects that pyromusical show designers have been using to differentiate their shows and stand out amongst their peers for years. Product line-wide, Pyroland's burn times, effect type mix, and the colors, oh my God, the colors, are some of the most unique that exist in the 1.4 consumer space. Pyroland has an extensive 1.4G consumer fireworks offering, as well as a 1.4G Pro line for qualified shooters. PyrolandFireworks.com offers an online ordering platform. You can pick up your order locally or chat with the staff about shipping direct to you. Pyroland also frequently attends, vends, and delivers to community and industry events all over the United States. Head over to PyrolandFireworks.com or email sales@PyrolandFireworks.com to get you well on your way to injecting some of the most unique effects in the 1.4 space into your next pyro musical. Pyroland Fireworks, the snappiest place on earth.
Like, that would be bad.
Nothing
Thanks,
like
Comcast.
losing faith in the internet. When you've lost faith in the internet, you've lost faith in everything.
It'll be better, though, because they're putting in all brand new lines to us. So that means I should have a faster internet. I can't wait.
It just means the government knows everything that you're doing, as if they didn't already. You live in Illinois.
Dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun.
They're looking at your internet usage history and they're like, how can we make more money off of this?
Yeah, we'll charge them even more. We've upgraded your systems. So now
bandwidth tax.
Yeah. Already had to upgrade. Remember?
Did you? Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Caden used all our internet up. I didn't even know that was a thing until Caden found it. Download this game. I don't like it. Delete it. Download this game. Delete it.
That's got to make you sweat when you open the bill and you're like, what in the world?
Well, no,
how does this happen?
It said you have 10% of your internet left. I was like, what? 10%? What does that mean? Then when we upgraded, it actually slowed us down. So after they did that, they didn't tell Amber to keep the same bandwidth. It would cost an extra $10 upon the $10 to get the unlimited data thing. So then we had to spend another $10. So they made $20 a month off of us right now to get more internet gigabytes and to keep the same speed we're at before. Dude, I remember when Comcast used to cost us $35 a month. And now we're at like $160 something.
It's data-geddon, AJ.
I know.
It's data-geddon. Pretty soon there's not gonna be any room for any of the data anywhere. And then the whole system's just going to crash. And then what are we going to do?
We go back to the 90s.
Call each other?
Call each other, yeah. Hey, man, is Bo over there? No. Oh, he's over. All right, I'll call Jamie. Hey, Jamie, is Bo there? No, man, I think he's over here. Blah, blah, blah. You're calling that person. Yeah. You know what? I can't find him. I'm going to get in the car. I'm going to just drive over there and see where he's at.
Where's Bo? Nobody knows. He's been into depression since the internet stopped working 6 months ago. Because he can't text anymore. Can't text, you can't send messages. Keyboards are now useless. Monitors are basically useless. You can't do anything with a monitor unless it's like play games. But game isn't attached to the internet. All of them are attached to the internet. So you can't do anything.
Not all of them.
Caden's Xbox, what? Minesweeper? Solitaire? I don't think you need an internet connection for those. I don't believe. Unless, of course, you want to pump in high scores from Cambodia.
Cambodia.
All right. Let's see. Oh, there we go. We'll do that one. That's record time. See, when Jamie's not here to give you a hard time,
I miss him though.
Then we get right to it.
Welcome to the Rhythm Pyro Podcast, where Bozy, AJ, and Jamie ignite your passion for pyro musical show design while testing the very limits of your capacity for stupid.
I would basically not function at all if I didn't have internet anymore.
Yes, you would. Just take a little time to get back to it.
I don't think it would. Because if the internet didn't
the 90s
work.
kid
I think
would embrace you. We lived through it. Now, if you were like a 2000s kid and the internet went down, you'd probably be in the corner in like a fetal position going, I can't deal with it. I can't deal with it.
Yeah, I think I still do have my Super Nintendo and my Sega Genesis downstairs. So I'd probably
you can make it long enough.
You can make it long enough. No, well, actually, no, that's a cruel joke too, because what TV am I going to plug that into? I'm pretty sure that none of them have the 3 RCA cables anymore. So that ain't going to happen.
No, they make adapters for them though.
I'm going to go over to mom and dad's house. But what are you doing here? I just want to see you guys.
I'm trading you my TV for this TV. I'm downgrading
your
guys.
Well, it looks here like you're playing video games on our TV that's 4 years old. Well, yeah, but I mean, I'm still want to hang out with you guys.
I'm here for you guys. I promise.
The internet doesn't work, so I can't look up any recipes anymore. They take me 6 hours to cook. So I need to be fed, Mom.
Oh man, imagine having to do this over phone calls and a tape recorder.
A tape recorder. Did you ever have one of those when yeah. Did you ever have any of those like those 4-track players when you were recording? Yeah.
And you didn't know that you needed special tapes, and you're like, why isn't this thing working? Everything just sounds like it's interlaced.
What is it? VCRs? They made you pull the tab off of the back of the cassette tape to
so
record.
Would we record over it?
Or you had to put like a piece of Scotch tape on the back to get it to record over again or something.
Oh my God.
Oh, you're right.
Wow.
I think I'd be entertained for a hot minute. I'd only be in a depression for like 5 months. Month 6, I think I'd come around.
Yeah, like I said, our 90s kid would come back out and embrace us. Like we had the internet then, but I mean, it was really slow, and we were like, screw this.
Welcome to the Room Pyro Podcast. I'm Bo. That's AJ.
Hola.
And Jamie is off this week. He's got some stuff going on. If you see him at COBRA-CON, I think he's still going to be there. Give him a hug. Tell him what's up. Tell him that Bo and AJ missed him this week.
And then grab a sticker.
And then tell him to stop talking about it. To get a sticker. I forgot to put that in the video. I think I just said find Jamie, but I don't know why. I did that thing that I did on that one episode where I gave you guys instructions as to what we were going to do for the episode. And then I came to the episode, and by the time I had gotten myself into recording, Jamie's like, did you not understand your own assignment? You gave us all these instructions and now you're saying all this other stuff. The last 3.5 hours we've been studying for this, and now you're saying do this last minute.
Oh, I do remember that.
I did the same thing with that video. I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to tell everybody to tell Jamie to stop talking about it and see how fast he runs out of stickers. But then I realized that's not in the video anywhere.
I just like watching his eyes in there. I was like, I envision that's probably what he looks like when he's building his 4-bay board.
Your filter's not changed. We're hobbyists and semi-professional pyro show designers. We're big fans of the modern pyro musical, and our little podcast is a place where we can get together, talk shop, fireworks, art, share tips, tricks, news, and insights with you. If you have not seen it yet, go check us out on Patreon. We have a Patreon now, patreon.com/rhythmpyro. As a supporting member of the Patreon, you get elite member status on the Discord server. And you're also going to get access to our monthly bonus show episode, which will eventually only be available to Patreon supporters. I think we were talking about that offline. We think we'll put like the first 2 out maybe to the entire community. So, just get everybody's whistles wet.
It's like, wow, these guys are totally different.
Yeah, so this is totally different. This is
it's
not
like Jab Fest 2024.
Jab Fest 2024, and this is not for children at all.
No.
Boy, did I mess up turning this
beep
on in the
beep
car.
beep beep beep.
Yeah, the monthly show is going to be unedited and uncensored. Every single month, we're going to put out a casting call in the Patreon community. And, we're going to probably open up 1 or 2 chairs, maybe 3 or 4 chairs. Who knows? We're fluid at this point, but we're going to bring on folks to the show and we're just going to talk about anything you want. And then also go check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, because those are boring.
It'll be fun. I can imagine talking to other people openly like that.
I'm looking forward to it.
We need to have a drunken episode, though.
Oh, that's I think every episode needs to open with, "What are you drinking?"
Yeah. And then you understand me.
Guys, did you know that was 5 hours long? What a time investment this has turned into.
Yeah.
Even at not editing, 5 hours is a whole lot more than I think we normally talk on.
5 hours, and I think I'm more stupid now than I was going in.
Yeah. Well, that's a slam dunk. Let's see. What are we talking about today? Okay. So, let's see. We got,
today in Pyro News.
Okay, Pyro News. We got obviously COBRA-CON's coming up this week. And to be honest, anyone that's listening to the podcast right now, there's a good chance you might be at COBRA-CON this week. So we hope that you have fun. AJ and I are not there. Jamie is there. Go learn something and bring something back and teach everyone what you've learned. Be a beacon of knowledge for the Pyro community.
Absolutely. That was well said.
COBRA-CON is such a good event, man. I think the networking aspect, it's really well done. You know, they're bringing all of these industry guys and all of these shooters. It's definitely a shooters event.
Yeah, but it's bringing in new and old shooters. Like the year I went, you definitely got to meet, old school guys that were the same time as me. And then the newer guys that were like, this is the first time getting COBRA. So, you got all three atmospheres in one.
Yeah. Yeah. The new guys that come in, so many of those classes they're really set up to do wonders for familiarity. It's always really cool to watch people studiously taking notes on all the things that they're learning at COBRA-CON, because really any firing system, any way you spin it, is it's an undertaking, right? Especially if you're not necessarily technologically inclined. It's hard to familiarize yourself with any kind of new tool. Firing systems take a long time to learn. And, to this day, it's hard to make all the right decisions. And even more so if you're ever in a pickle and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I'm looking at on the system. COBRA-CON is a really good place to have those refreshers.
Yeah, ask those questions and what people do to, have that knowledge in that just in case moment kind of thing. That's a big thing with anybody that's starting with their fire system too. Try to do stuff that might test with your system that you think might confuse you at the shooter's table so that you can have an answer in your head at that exact moment of what you can do in that situation.
That's right. Try to break your firing system and your brain
like that.
on the 364 other days.
I mean, get yourself familiar with like any error codes or something that might pop up or something that, you got your own cheat sheet that they send you. But if you were in that situation before you're at the shooter's table and you're like, oh, then you have that knowledge base to be like, stay calm. I know what to do.
Yep. Like you said, like referencing the cheat sheets, COBRA's support base, just that system that they have built out so you can quite literally search anything that you see. If you get tossed an error code. Yeah, the COBRA portal, you type your error code in there and it's a treasure trove of knowledge on that stuff. I mean, to this day, like I don't know what a lot of those error codes mean. There's the few that pop up that you see all the time. Error 3 is a big one for me on the modules because like half the time I've got I'm got my elbow laying on the boot or whatever, and it's just like it can't go through boot cycle because I'm laying on a button. But regardless, like there's the ones that you see that and you've had experience with before, but then there's the other ones that you're like, well, I got to be honest with you, I don't know what that means. But the COBRA portal makes it really easy to search for that stuff. Did you see that post? The one that went out a week or two ago about Missouri state law?
I did.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's so rough to even see that and go, oh God, this is on the way. It's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. Even though we've talked about it for a while now, like you know, in the back of your head, you're always like, maybe it won't. And then seeing that, you're like, oh, here it comes.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Peter Rogoz is going to call in here in a little bit. 1.4 Pro is obviously still a hot button. It's been a hot button for some time, but I guess the state fire marshal in Missouri is taking a stance on it now. And while it's not law officially yet, based on the way it reads, you know, we'll like Peter can kind of talk to that when we get him on here, because I genuinely don't know what the timelines look like for that. But it sounded like in the post that it's not law yet, but it's going to be. And I think Spirit's taking some action on their end to get in front of it. But essentially the UN 0336 class, it sounds like that they're lumping that in with 0431, which has always, for the most part, required
at least
licensure.
the PGIs, yeah. But I wouldn't say license. It's more of a classification of safety more than anything.
Well, I don't know. Like I had it pulled up on my phone earlier, and I don't have shame on me, I don't have the post in front of me, but I can't remember the way it was worded. It sounded like it was like the UN 0431 classification in the state of Missouri was always under the proximate umbrella, which required Missouri state licensure. And I don't know that for a fact, but I thought that was a little interesting to read.
It said the definition as it exists today equates UN 0431 products to proximate fireworks, and calls for an effect operator license or to order and purchase.
Is it accurate? I mean,
have to look that up
all proximate fireworks UN 0431?
I think so. I mean, it's the same stuff like the high-end stage effects. They're all UN 431. At least the ones that I've seen. It's weird that he says that it requires that license. But if that was the case, then how was it able to be sold prior with just the PGI cert? If that was the case, if it needed that license, that's a special license. That's not like just a PGI cert. That's something you got to go get. Like here in Illinois, I know it's a special effects license to shoot fireballs and close prox and stuff like that. That's a license you have to get through the state.
Yeah, 0431, I think all traditional pro lines prior to the last few years, and especially prior to the 0336 for pro use only category, everything was 0431 from everyone. And all the way up until that point in time where China just said, nah, we ain't going to make it anymore.
We no longer recognize it.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Hold on. Peter's calling in here. Peter Rogoz, Vice President, Spirit of 76, 1.4 Pro line. What's up, dude?
How's it going? Good to be here.
You're on your way to the promised land, right?
Yes, actually departing for COBRA-CON here in just a few minutes after this call.
You said it's a, 4-hour drive?
Yeah, we're looking about 4.5 from Chicago.
So you are in my neck of woods.
I am. I'm on the northwest side of Chicago in the city here, very close to O'Hare Airport.
Oh, gotcha. Well, that's where I work. I live out in the country, though.
All right.
I couldn't live out that way. Yeah. I don't know how you do it, brother. Can't do it.
Born and raised, it's in my blood.
Oh, okay.
Big city living is in your blood, huh?
Hey, I grew up in the big school.
That's right.
I grew up in Aurora, downtown Aurora. I mean, that was big city, but moving out here when I was 18, I'll live out here the rest of my life.
No, I don't mind it. Where I live is a pretty quiet area. It's somewhat suburban living, so I'm not into living in like city center or anything like that, but very close to interstates, which makes it very easy to get away, get to some open land for some fishing and fireworks and that kind of stuff.
Nice. Sounds like he needs to come out my way. Yeah. Come fishing out here, brother.
I think I might.
I got a stocked lake.
Wow. All right. You got the full setup.
Are you shooting a show at COBRA-CON?
Not this year. We are sponsoring the boot camp, though. So 76
cool.
Pro Line is the boot camp sponsor. Spirit of 76 is we're going to have some other consumer fireworks in there as well. So
yeah, you guys teach any classes?
No, again, not this year. We're just going to be taking part in the boot camp. We're going to have a representative in there the whole time just to, help answer questions and help people along with our stuff.
Well, I wish you guys a good one. I hope it's hell of a success. COBRA-CON's always fun. How many years have you been now?
So I went the first year, which was 2019, I think. And then I went last year, and this will be my third one. So I think I missed one or two in between. I'm not sure.
Nah, it's such a cool event, man.
It is. It's a really good time. I think it's one of the best shooter-oriented events there are out there.
Yeah. Well, it's a hell of a networking event for the shooters, and honestly, a really good networking event for suppliers and industry guys too.
Yeah, and super educational. With all the seminars, with the mix of people there, with the amount of kind of emphasis on technology, I think it's a great place to go and learn about, current technologies and future stuff as well.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you calling in. It's a wrap with us, man, on the, ever unfolding 1.4 Pro line soap opera.
Yeah, absolutely.
Soap opera.
It sounds like something's afoot in Missouri. All the associated product classes, UN 0431 and the short-lived class, formerly known as UN 0336 for pro use only. It's been on governmental and regulatory body radars, it seems like, for a while now. And I saw the post that kind of surfaced in some of the Facebook groups and forums. And I think you originally posted it in Mo Pyro's forum. But it sounds like the Missouri State Fire Marshal is, at least verbally at this point, implementing some real regulation. So I wanted to see if you could talk us through what you're hearing, kind of get everybody up to speed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you don't mind, I'll start this with a little bit of a history lesson, because I know there's a lot of information flying around, and I think sometimes people don't have a full grasp of the picture, the scope of what happened. But the organization APA, it's American Pyrotechnics Association, they worked with the DOT, specifically PHMSA, who runs basically Hazardous Material Transportation Division of DOT. They got together and came up with standards that allow for easy approvals of fireworks, right? So those standards are things like 1.4G, UN 0336, consumer fireworks, standard that's been around a really long time. These things are consumer. They have to have this kind of labeling, this kind of fuse, all that stuff. Years ago, the companies, primarily companies in the United States, that were making fireworks for proximate use, needed a category of fireworks. Now, their explosive content was nowhere near 1.3 products, so they didn't want to call it a 1.3 product because it didn't have the same hazard or anything to the items. But they did need a classification, so they came up with 1.4G articles pyrotechnic, right? So those were, when that first got birthed, the idea was that was supposed to be like gerbs, air bursts, small items you might see like on a tour or a concert or sporting event, something like that.
When about on the timeline was that?
This would be in the original version, I believe, was adopted in the late 90s, if I'm not mistaken, of APA. Okay, cool. I think there was a first version even in the late 80s, but I don't know that category was there. Please excuse me if I'm not accurate about that. But the point is that existed predating any kind of pro-line brand as we know them, right?
Yeah.
The pro-line brands as we know them started around 2009, 2010 with Spirit of 76 fireworks. And I think Dominator joining around that time as well. So we started making consumer fireworks that had single effects. So they were all consumer fireworks. They were still UN 0336 consumer. They were labeled as such. They were fused as such. But we just made single effects so people could shoot shows easier in their backyards, instead of getting like a mixed cake. And what we saw a lot of was folks tearing stuff apart in order to get the effects they wanted. So this was a way to solve that problem for them. And then we realized this classification existed of articles pyrotechnic. And as long as the products were similar to consumer in weight and composition, we were able to make them under that category, which made it a lot easier to do things like put E-match connectors on them, take away the spacing between tubes so that the cakes cost a little less to ship. Things like using a little bit more energetic powders that can be used in consumer stuff. So that's where you came up with what you guys know today as, pro-line fireworks, if you will, pro-use only stuff.
Right.
So then UN 0431, Articles Pyrotechnic, was no problem. It existed as a category for well over a decade with very few people importing it, but because the marketplace wasn't that big for this particular type of product, but it was a need. So we were happy to cater to that need. Then in 2019, I believe it was, China stopped recognizing UN 0431 as a class of fireworks. UN 0431 is somewhat unique to the United States, and they just didn't recognize it anymore. So all of our stuff coming from China needed a new designation. In a last-minute adjustment, APA created that UN 0336 fireworks professional use only class, right? And that's where everybody jumped on the bandwagon. Every exporter realized, hey, these are UN 0336, just the same as any other UN 0336. I don't think they realized the differences on this end.
Yeah.
And suddenly everybody was importing it. And it was offered on everybody's import list. So,
I don't want to derail you there, but I do have a question when it comes to the inception of UN 0336 for pro use only. When that came about, you mentioned that the APA had something to do with its inception. And, I would imagine that, all of the standards that exist, powder maximums, the kind of powder that can go into, compositions and things of that nature. Who does the APA have to work with as far as a regulatory body in order to get that stuff pushed through?
That's primarily PHMSA. So PHMSA is who's actually reviewing this paperwork. So DOT has this division, I should say. Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, I believe it stands for.
Yeah.
And they are the ones that basically determine what is required for classifications for transportation of various products. And that in turn will give us things for fireworks like a 1.3 or a 1.4 designation. And then additionally a UN designation, meaning the United Nations shipping code, the hazard code for that product.
Right.
So PHMSA are the ones that kind of maintain these rules. What APA does is they create an easy way to get these EX approvals.
Okay. All right. And, you mentioned that a lot of companies took advantage of that and jumped on that 0336 for pro use only class. I'm genuinely curious, do you think that the industry as a whole took some liberties with that product class's inception that might have resulted in some unintentional abuses, I guess, that, brought about more regulatory scrutiny?
Perhaps, I don't want to point fingers or anything like that. I think a lot of this stemmed from just sheer confusion. I don't think so. Let me speak to what Spirit of 76 has done historically. Historically, Spirit of 76, before anybody stepped in or did anything, we always required some proof of training or something in order to acquire these professional use products, right? We basically kind of self-designated that and said, hey, we realize this product is not consumer fireworks. It's not labeled for the general public. So let's make sure that we're collecting some kind of information on these folks, making sure that folks are trained, making sure that, we're doing our due diligence. And we functioned that way for many, many years. I think some folks weren't equipped with that information when this UN 0336 professional use category became available. And so they just didn't implement maybe those same controls. And now the argument comes down to, okay, well, is there a legal need to do that or not? What are these products?
Yeah.
And so it's less black and white and it's more of a gray area we came into. It's like, well, there is no federal law that says these can't be sold to individuals, but they're also not consumer fireworks. But also some states do have rules and regulations in place that sort of identify these products. But because the classification's so new, the regulations haven't caught up yet, right? So
Yeah.
So that's where we end up in this confusion spot. And I think if you're just like, Joe Blow retailer and you run your fireworks store, a couple tents or whatever, you import your container or two of fireworks every year, suddenly you got access to this really cool stuff that your supplier's saying, hey, check it out. I think there's just an assumption of trust there that like, well, my supplier's not going to sell me something illegal. They wouldn't be able to sell it to me, right? So I'm going to buy it and I'm going to sell it. And that's an honest mistake. That's not I don't think that's intentional by any means.
Right. Yeah. Well, and all of it seemed to happen so quick too. I mean, in reality, even when this stuff came into play around 2019, anytime the regulation changes like that and the industry is adapting and trying to figure out how to grow at the same time, there's a lot of challenges to go along with that. You got to figure out how to adapt to a lot of the new regulations that are coming into play. So, I mean, it does make sense that it's, like you said, it's confusing and it's a gray area.
And it was somewhat unusual. It was a matter of timing. We're talking about the 2018 edition of APA 87-1, which again is the guidelines to easily get EX approvals, right? Certainly not the only path, but it's a way to do it that creates the least resistance for the industry. And generally that takes a couple of years of feedback amongst the APA organization and the fireworks industry at large. They open it up to comment. Folks are able to give feedback. It was just a matter of timing in that this UN 0431 designation was no longer recognized, and APA member companies were stuck and really needed a solution. And so the thought was, okay, let's just create this category so that these products can still come in. Mm-hmm. And I honestly don't think anybody thought of the realization that, will this cause any confusion or any problems down the road? And Here we are down the road, and it's caused nothing but confusion and problems.
Yeah. So that brings us to the present. Mm-hmm. Plug us into what's going on in the state of Missouri.
So this speaks to what I think I've preached from the beginning here. This is not going to become a federal issue. I don't think any federal, at least in the short term, no federal body that I'm aware of is going to try to adopt this en masse to try to tackle this, right?
ATF, for example.
Yeah. So like DOT, it's difficult for them to enforce this because they're in the transportation business, right? So they can investigate, they can try to put together trails, but essentially if you're transporting correctly, if it's designated right, they don't have a ton of bite. ATF has been repeatedly asked to step in on this, and they've repeatedly sort of said, it's not really our place, but if it becomes a huge problem, we definitely will. Mm-hmm. But they've been working very closely with the industry to try to not make it their problem, right?
Right.
I'll put one caveat in there. The ATF is currently in a updating period. They are updating their regulations for the first time in many, many years. And they have a several-point plan to update explosives regulations. Part of that may or may not include fireworks. And what would happen is, I think they're realizing fireworks shouldn't be treated like all other explosives necessarily. Mm-hmm. So they're looking to potentially create some rules, regulations that make things easier. But that said, it could potentially make things more challenging for stuff like 1.4 Pro. I'm not saying it will.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I know they're open and that's potentially on the table. That said, that process will probably take 4 to 5 years, I would guess, before we're actually seeing that. So,
well, I mean, it is nice to know they're looking at it.
Yeah, so they are looking at it, and this is all public information. If anybody wants to know, they can jump on ATF's website and they can start looking around at press releases and whatnot. And there's always public comment periods for all of these things. So there's usually several month periods where anybody can go on and just write, hey, this is a problem for me, or I agree with this, or I disagree with this for these reasons. And that's all taken very seriously. Having sat in on some of those committee meetings, I can say, every single response is gone through and considered and goes into subcommittees and back and forth.
That's beautiful.
So it is a somewhat open process. It's just the process itself isn't advertised very well. Mm-hmm. So I recommend anybody that has a chance, jump in, check out PHMSA, check out DOT, check out ATF, check out all that. But back to the state thing. Fireworks, for the most part, besides the overreaching category of fireworks, are enforced on a state level, right? Some states allow these kinds of fireworks, some states don't. Some states allow tent sales, some states brick and mortar,
Yeah.
It basically comes down to the state. States have, not all states, but a lot of them do have regulations about professional fireworks or shows, or a lot of cases even UN 0431. The trouble is they've tied it, like the state of Missouri, to historical definitions So state of Missouri just says proximate fireworks are UN 0431. UN 0431 are proximate fireworks, right? And that's always been there. And that says you need a license and, you need a permit in order to shoot a show. That's been there for many, many years. It's just a bad definition because these aren't proximate fireworks. So we're currently going through a revision with the state of Missouri. And we brought that to their attention because that's a straight up dangerous definition. There's no such thing as a firework that's proximate. And certainly if you took many of the UN 0431 products on the marketplace out there, I would never recommend to shoot them before a proximate audience, right? So
right. That's actually something in Iowa I saw too, that their law that changed in February of this year, they call 1.4 Pro theatrical effects now. Okay. So this is the pathway that I see happening state by state, right? And again, I think this is going to come down to state enforcement, state regulations. They're going to go, okay, these items are for professionals, right? What does that mean? If a state already has an established process to determine a fireworks display professional of some kind, like the state of Missouri or the state of Iowa, they're probably going to go, okay, then you're going to need this license in the state because we've already established a method for this. We know what we consider a professional shooter. And in order to shoot this product, they're going to have this kind of license, right? That's the direction we see it heading with Missouri. They have not officially updated their definitions, but they have verbally declared that, hey, this is the way we're going to enforce it until we update the definitions. So that's kind of where we're at. So you said that they're enforcing it even though it's not a law yet?
Well, again, it's a poor definition thing, right? So if they see a UN 0431, they technically have it written down. They just defined it in a strange, outdated way. So what would happen there is like someone would probably get a fine or something, and then it would have to go to litigation, right? You'd have to go to the state fire marshal and say, hey, I don't believe this is correct. I'm going to sue that I've been incorrectly, there's been an incorrect violation here. And then it would go into some sort of proceedings. That's very expensive, very time consuming. Yeah. And at the end of the day, they're a year away from updating their codes anyways. So, it's not the strongest argument right now at the moment. Yeah. Do I agree with it? Not necessarily. I mean, I think we were already doing our due diligence. I think it's annoying anytime somebody steps in and does additional governmental controls. But at the same time, I sort of understand. It's just, it's a frustrating situation for everybody. For sure.
Yeah. Well, and that's got to be difficult too, because it opens a window of time where there's a verbal definition for. I think it sounds like verbal definition for 0336 for pro use only, where they're kind of considering it essentially the same as 0431, right?
Correct. And in the eyes of FMSA, they are essentially the same because it's the same, the same product attributes for the same classification can be issued. And essentially, if you have a UN 0336 professional use only product, it's equivalent in its attributes and classification to UN 0431. Even though the paperwork might not say that, that's essentially what the product is, right? So everyone's getting in rooms together and going, okay, how do we enforce this? What do we want to do? States that already have something on the books where it's like, we already have a shooter's license process and we already identified, either proximate items or proximate shows or theatrical or something like that, are probably going to say, okay, this stuff gets lumped under that category as well.
Yeah. But it sounds like pretty much already they're making it so that 0431 has the same rules to get as 13. I mean, if you need a shooter's license and you need to be, have a 54 to get that shooter's license and you got to have insurance, well, it's the same thing.
That's where we get into nuances, right? And this is where we've stepped in and tried to intervene as best we can. So we've come to the table and said, we first started this as okay, I don't think a license should be necessary. That ship sailed pretty quickly. That became pretty obvious. Spirit of 76 Proline, I think we're, the most recognized brand. It's literally in our name, the word Proline. We kind of inked it, and it just when people say Proline now, we sort of birthed that terminology, right? So whenever a conversation happens, everyone's looking right at us. Whether we're the problem or not, we're getting fingers pointed right at us. So we said, okay, we got to take action on this. So first we thought, okay, let's see what we can get as far as traction on, like, look, we've been operating this way for many years. This is essentially not a huge issue or a non-issue. Let's just move past it. Quickly came to find out that's not going to happen. Like, it's just not. Every time I get into a room with industry players and whatnot, this is hot topic number one. So our next step is, okay, this is not 1-3. I believe you should not have an ATF license in order to acquire it. I believe if you do require an ATF license, a good number of people will actually go out and get that ATF license because it's just a fee and some fingerprints. And then why would they buy this stuff? They're going to buy 6-inch shells and shoot them in their backyard, right? Like, at that point, just open it up. You're not going to have enough investigators. You're going to get a flood of license holders. I think it'll create a worse issue. So we're trying to push away from that. And we're also trying to push away from, permit and insurance requirements. I believe if you're at your house, you're at your backyard, you got your 4th of July barbecue, you're a licensed or trained individual, depending on the state you're in, you should be able to enjoy that stuff and not have to go through getting a permit and insurance and all that. Of course, there are forces that are pushing against that. We're one force that's pushing the other way. So that's sort of the battlefront now, is like, okay, let's keep the ATF out of this at least as long as we can. And let's keep this accessible for folks that are just shooting backyard shows on their own property. You can technically go out and build fireworks and then shoot them the same day, as long as you're not transporting them. You don't even need an ATF license. So why require it for these types of products? So that's sort of where we are now. I encourage folks to get involved and voice their opinions on it too. It's,
I mean, it sounds like you guys are in pretty close collaboration with, the state fire marshals and, some of these industry bodies that are really close to this. And, that's something that I had noted here too, because I've seen a lot of publications and communication from you on news feeds and forums and things like that. So, thank you for keeping people that aren't part of those organizations kind of plugged in, because it seems like a lot of the hobbyists and people that play in the club space, train semi-professionals, but we're just doing this because we enjoy doing it and love it. We're not necessarily entrenched in that world. So, thank you for keeping people abreast of that stuff.
I started as a hobbyist, same as I think a lot of folks did. It seems like either you're born into this business with a last name that says you're going to be in this business, or you're a hobbyist and you kind of get stuck, right? But myself, Ed Vassell from Dominator, started as a hobbyist. Tim Jameson, IPC, like, we all came up together. Bunch of us that are now kind of working in this business. Brian Craig Co-Racks, right?
Yep.
Scott Smith, even, he just showed up with like a little hobbyist firing system at PGI like 15 years ago, and now take a look at Cobra, right? So I get it. Like, I was the customer. I was like, hell yeah, Proline, this is sweet. Like, I don't have to tear apart cakes anymore, and I don't have to do all this stupid, dangerous stuff in order to put on a cool show. And I understand the benefit. And Spirit of 76 was raised on hobbyists, right? Like, we love the hobbyist market. That's who it's for. But we just ran into this brick wall. And keep in mind, I'm with Spirit for 18 months now. I was in the fireworks industry before that, but I did take a break during COVID. So I didn't realize how much of this was bubbling. And then I walked into the room at APA 18 months ago, and I was like, oh, wow. Everyone's staring right at me. I'm like, whew, like literally it's on my shirt.
What the hell have I gotten back into?
So again, the first few months was just like getting a footing of like, okay, let's see what we can do here. And then now it's just full blown like, okay, again, Spirit of 76 has never been the problem, right? For 10 years, this existed. No issues.
Yeah.
But it's literally in our name. And whether we like it or not, we have the responsibility of taking on this fight or whatever you want to call it. Right?
And man, you guys are such a big player. I think that there's so many people that kind of look up to the big industry guys to take up a shield and kind of fight the good fight. And thank you guys for innovating product lines that did all of those things, right? They served so many little niches and created safer shows for all of us that were essentially trying to get so creative that we weren't doing ourselves any services when it came to being safe. So you guys innovated ways for us to do this stuff and do it safely. But, also thank you for just standing up for us and being a voice.
No, absolutely. We appreciate it. And thank you guys as the fireworks community at large. Like it's the reason we're able to do what we do. And, it's the other part of this is though, the hobbyist market. When we say hobbyist, I think that's probably your target audience. That's a lot of the COBRA-CON folks. Though it seems large to us, in the industry as a whole.
Such a small niche group. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a small piece of the pie. So when I'm at APA and I go, hey, what about these backyard hobby guys? They go, why don't they just go to like Phantom, right? Or why don't they just go to TNT and just go down to their local store and buy the fireworks? And it's like, well, they're not those users, right? These are
advanced
These
users.
aren't those customers. Yeah, exactly.
And then you get the other side of the fence with that too, where, there's people that are like, well, why don't you go out and get licensed and do all these things? And, the truth of the matter is quite a lot. If I would say, venture to guess, very, very many of the hobbyist folks are licensed.
Yes.
We wind up getting licensed because we realize that this whole new world of education and kind of furthering the hobby exists. But the reality behind it is this little niche of a space, being a hobbyist and shooting backyard shows, it's the origin story. It's a place where we all come from. And, it's special to us.
Absolutely. It is special. And I think it has a place and needs to continue having a place, right? Which is why we at Spirit are, again, dedicating a lot of resources to try to maintain it the best we can, right? Like truly there's not a lot of us. There's very few of us. And we're trying to kind of lead this thing. That said, the scale of it is tiny. And that's industry wide. Hobbyist guys is like, it's just not that many folks. You go to a party, you go to a COBRA-CON, you go to a PGI, you go to a Sky Wars. It's kind of the same faces most years, right? But the display end of things is large, and display companies use this product a lot, and they like this category because it makes their lives a lot easier. They don't have to store things in magazines. They don't have to worry about with transportation as much. It's important to their businesses, and they are what have historically maybe made somewhat natural enemies. They're probably the biggest allies we have in this right now. So we at Spirit are kind of in this unique situation where we have access to the hobbyist pool at large, and we also have access to these large display companies. And I'm trying to build a bridge between the two in that, exactly what you said. A lot of these guys do get licensed, and I think they should continue pursuing getting a license. And display companies, quite frankly, are suffering from a huge shortage of licensed individuals to the tune of like 4th of July shows just going away.
Oh, yeah.
The community just says, here's my budget, and I have a shooter.
They wind up having to turn away work.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And sometimes hobbyists jump in there and, they might do something and help out their town or their community or whatever. And I think that's great. But it does create a liability for the display companies. And, it creates a situation for them. And so I suggest anybody who's a hobbyist, don't fear the display companies. At this point in time, they're so desperate for folks that I think they're a lot open than they used to historically be. I don't think it's as much of a good old boys club the way it used to be.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really good information there. And that industry is actually what's keeping the hobbyist thing alive, because that designation is so important to them, So if you have an opportunity, don't shy away from the local display companies. And I'm telling the display guys the same thing, because all I heard my whole life was, if you're not going to shoot on the 4th of July for me, I've got no use for you. And it's like, well, these backyard guys are proud of their shows, and this is their artistic expression. And this is where they bring their family together on the 4th of July to have their big picnic, and they're going to do their big show. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be hard to convince them to not do that, right? Like, this is personal to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I suggest display companies, take somebody on an off-date show once in a while and see what happens. That's what happened to me.
Yeah,
I was one of the no way 4th of July guys, and look at now, So.
Yeah. The pyro musical and the extremely over the top scripted works, that's what all of us seem to live for in this really niche space. And I'll do anything that I can during the year to help out the club scene and inversely, sub and shoot for display companies here in Ohio. But you never really felt that you were utilizing your max potential, I guess, and doing all that really cool stuff. But I mean, people have said it, not necessarily restricted, because I wholeheartedly believe that in the efforts of the designers in this tiny little niche, we've done such cool things that these display companies are now like, oh, well, I can differentiate myself in the professional space if I can figure out how to do it cost effectively, and then put myself out in front of the rest of the competition that's still shooting, the tried and true good old American shell show.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of messaging behind this, I mean, the hobbyist guys are like the innovation lab, it's the laboratory where it's like, let me take some stuff and do some crazy stuff at Sky Wars or COBRA-CON or whatever.
Yeah, the mad scientists.
I'm going to take infinite hours to do it, where we could never, we can never reasonably commercialize this effort.
And it'll never be good enough. No matter how many hours you put into it.
Yeah, but I'm going to walk away with some cool info. And I might walk away with some like, I made a new tool, or I made a new rack, or I came up with a new XYZ. Like, that is the innovation lab, Yep. And I believe it. I believe the two, like, display companies and hobbyists, again, formerly natural enemies. I'm the guy standing in the middle, waving my hand saying, look, let's come together on this. There's a whole classification of fireworks that we both can take advantage of. We're both really into shooting fireworks shows. We're both really into doing that in front of big audiences. We've got a lot of things in common here. Let's see if we can bridge these gaps. And maybe for the 4th of July, you go out and you save that community 4th of July show that otherwise would not have had one because there isn't a shooter available. And then maybe you go out to Sky Wars, or you go to COBRA-CON, or you go to more of these events that exist than ever before, and you do your amazing one-off show and, invite your friends and family to go see it.
Yeah.
Because that's where we are. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I say, like, hobbyists can save the 4th of July in America. Literally, it's up to you. It's like that Uncle Sam poster. I need you to save the 4th of July.
See, I think that's going to be a little hard for some hobbyists, though, because if they're used to doing their own kind of show the way they like to do it, they're paying for it, obviously. And then they go, oh, well, this company wants some help. And then they go out and do that with them. And they're like, okay, well, here's the budget. And they're like, well, I can't do what I normally do. So never mind. That's the way I think a lot of them are going to look at it, too, is I'm not able to open myself up the way I want to. I don't have the money. So why would I do this here when I can just go do it in my own kind of backyard kind of thing and enjoy myself?
And again, the reason I bring it up is because they do make a natural ally in trying to protect this type of product, this designation of product, access to this product, all that kind of stuff, right? Like, you literally go up to a display company and you go, hey, do you have a problem with Backyard Guy shooting a fireworks show for a subdivision? Yes. Do you have a problem with Backyard Guy shooting a show for a subdivision if your company name is on the contract? No. Yeah. And that's what I mean. I think we're closer than ever before to bridging that gap of maybe I'm not saying hobbyists need to only come to the table here. Display companies need to come to the table too and say, maybe we're not so rigid with what we allow for our shows, or maybe we give a little bit more flexibility, or maybe we are a little more open to suggestion and innovation. And hobbyists can come to the table and say, maybe I'm a little bit more flexible on, understanding that these commercial efforts do protect and support what I love to do for fun as well. So that's the messaging, right? I'm not saying one side or the other has to submit. I'm just saying, as the guy who's sitting here in the middle, I see both sides and I'm like, man, both sides benefit. Let's kind of work together on this.
Yeah,
let's try to bridge the gap.
And bridging that gap, you're going to get nothing but better shows across the board. Every 4th of July, you're going to go out and you're not just going to see that downtown shell show. You're going to start seeing fronts and really ornate things that you normally wouldn't see. And that's just going to do good things for the local economies too.
And these things happen in waves, right? There was a wave in kind of the mid 2000s, late 2000s, where a lot of us entered. And now 10, 15 years later, we are the industry leaders. I think in the last 5 years, we've seen a huge influx of people into the hobbyist world. And in the next 10, 15 years, they're going to be the industry leaders. That's guys like you. That's guys like your audience. That's the folks at Skywars now lighting up the skies.
I think the hardest part, though, will be bringing other hobbyists in. If this really sets across the whole United States of its product classification and how to get it, you eliminate other people coming into the hobby, because people coming fresh into it are going to be like, oh, I'm not dealing with all that stuff. I don't even need to deal with it. So you actually kill a hobbyist in the long run.
I agree. It does potentially close that off, but that's where when I'm in the room with these folks, the big industry players, I look at them and I go, look, guys, this is your feeder league. Like, do not alienate these guys. Do not turn your back on them. These are the people who already own a firing system, already own racks, already know all the safety distances, already know how to operate and produce a show. Why make an enemy of these guys? Don't do that. So, like I say, both sides need to kind of come together here.
Even in saying that, I mean, if I rewind 5 or 6 years ago, probably even a little further than that, it's a lot easier to get plugged into a community now than I think it's ever really been.
Absolutely.
So even, the licensing aspect of it, when I knew nobody, it was daunting as hell, because you don't know where to start. You're really timid to kind of take the step. But I don't think it's like that now. It takes 10 minutes on a Facebook group, or even talking to a vendor that is versed in this kind of stuff. And it's really easy to get plugged in with a local club, and then getting licenses and working with the regulations rather than working against them.
Exactly. And I hate to say it, the train's not coming. The train's kind of already here. And I'm trying to come up with ways that everybody can still win out and continue enjoying this, because it's absolutely, it should remain. And I think, the backyard shooters are the innovation labs. But again, these connections need to be made. Everybody needs to realize the value that they're bringing to the table. And we need to continue kind of working on that. And I think we're going to see more and more people than ever before. Things like Ignite firing systems, where you can buy something for a few bucks and go out there and clip out together a few cakes, and you're like, oh, that's the bug, right? That gets everybody starting to pursue the channel. It's just, historically, I think it's been a small industry that's been very guarded, and it's no longer industry player against industry player. It's now industry against every other force, and we need to stick together and work on those challenges.
Yeah. Peter, thank you so much for your time today, man. Thank you for all that you've done, all that Spirit's doing, and everything that the rest of the industry players and names are doing to kind of keep fighting the good fight for us. How can people find you, man?
Check us out, 76fireworks.com for Spirit of 76's main website. We've got, boy, oh boy, I think about 2,000 different SKUs of fireworks in stock now. So check them out. Get your 4th of July going. 76proline.com is our brand new Pro line website we just launched earlier this year. Take a look at it. We're still improving it all the time, but it sure makes finding the fireworks you need for a show a lot faster and easier than anything else. You can filter by colors, types, all that kind of stuff. And most importantly, our 76 show series is launching as part of this whole debacle of confusion with Pro line and Pro use and all that. We've taken all of our consumer 76 Pro line items and rewrapped them as 76 show series. They look really great. Same performance you're used to. We're going to keep growing that line. We're going to keep adding effects. Perfect for the backyard shooter and perfect for the display shooter as well. So,
I'm going to write that one down. That's news to me. 76 show series.
76 show series. Cool. First items are arriving here in about a month.
Nice, man. I hope you and yours have a great time at COBRA-CON. And tell everybody I said hi, will you?
Definitely. And thank you guys so much for what you do. You guys bringing these topics to the audiences that you guys speak to. It's really important. It's really cool. I'm glad we finally have like sort of a, not just hobbyist system, but a hobbyist ecosystem growing now where information can be exchanged even more easily. It's really, really cool to see.
Got to stick together.
Appreciate that. Yeah, that's right. Now stop talking about it.
Stop talking about it.
Nice guy.
Man, that was a depressing conversation.
Nice guy. Yeah, that was
really nice guy, but doesn't make me feel any better.
I really like what I really do like what they're doing to try to get in front of all of these regulatory bodies, and being a shooter and a user of this classification of product. It only helps this small subcategory of shooters to have access to it. And I completely agree with him. It's at the end of the day, it's all compromise. If we don't find compromise with the regulatory bodies and, the display companies and everybody kind of working together to an end that eventually kind of promotes more shooters kind of getting involved and creating bigger, better displays and kind of evolving displays. I want to live in a world where the downtown show in any city or municipality looks
like the Lake Show.
Yeah, it looks like Sky Wars. That would be awesome. But I understand that from the pocketbook of a display company, it's just not cost feasible. They can't do that necessarily and perform high level.
It's the manpower, so you're going to pay for more labor because those shows take longer to put together. And then paying the person that's designing the show, having enough designers to do multiple shows like that. And then, of course, the product price goes up dramatically because you're going from hundreds of cues to maybe 1,000.
When you get involved with professional fireworks, right? I feel like you're the perfect example of someone
went from hobbyist to doing something with a company.
Yeah, but you didn't just make the transition from hobbyist to professional shooter in the traditional way. I'm a pyromusical guy. And when I go over onto the other side of the fence and the things that I do semi-professionally with the club, when we subcontract and shoot for display companies in Ohio, it is traditional shell shows. And very seldomly do we get super involved with like really intricate stuff and the stuff that I love. But it's been really cool to watch you do your thing, because like you walked into it and you're like, you know what? Here's the deal. I want to do this, but I'm going to do it in a way that I feel fulfilled doing it. And that's not to say that I don't feel fulfilled going out and shooting shell shows, but you're going out and putting out full-fledged pyromusicals at shows that were traditionally shell shows, and you're doing it legally for a display company.
It's different for everybody, I think, though. For me, it's a passion. I mean, we've already said this 100 times before in the podcast. If you don't do pyromusicals and all that stuff because of the amount of work, because you just want to do it, it's got to be built inside you to have that drive, that thrill that you want to do it. You're working harder for the same amount of money, but I'm doing it because it makes me happy. And because I want to bring something new to those shows that these people have never seen before. So that's going to be the hard part for anybody that wants to do something similar. If they were, shooting a backyard show, or they got a little thing that they do for their town and they want to go into something bigger, you're going to have to ask yourself, are you willing to put in that much extra work to do that kind of stuff? And it is even more work because now you're doing everything, not in your backyard. You're going to have to do it on site. There's a lot more planning. There's a lot more product selection things that you have to do. It becomes more of a chore than a hobby.
You're right, though, dude. I mean, the crowds, when they see that kind of show and production, it's next level stuff. It's such a departure.
The first time they see it, they go nuts.
Yeah, I going into it, I don't even believe they knew that there was a new way to enjoy fireworks. But the first time they see a pyromusical, they're like, wow. Kick me in the spinal cavity. That was really cool. I had no idea that you could synchronize this stuff to music. But now that I know you can synchronize it to music, I guess I have expectations for the next year. But the show's going to be different. It's not going to be the same thing, because you can totally differentiate between something that's scripted and choreographed versus the traditional shell show that is going to get a hitch in its giddy up at the very end with a finale.
Man, that's different too. Like I said, the first year that we did the show and they weren't expecting it. And at the end, it was, oh my God, everybody talked about it. So, again, like you said, the next year, it drew even more people in because people were like, oh, it's not fireworks. Well, this is totally different. This is a whole nother level of fireworks. So let's go out and it brings more people.
Yeah.
But again, it goes with, you know, from year one budget to year two budget, the budget didn't go up that much. So you're still, as a crew, deciphering, you know, where are we going to take the hit on this to be able to do this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, it's a little different than maybe if someone just joined a company because they're going to have their percentage they want. And that's the deal kind of thing, you know, where we have a little more leeway.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's been fun.
It takes somebody that's really dedicated to it, because if you don't have a super dedicated lead and
passion, you got to have that. You got to have that drive for it. If you don't want to do it,
then
you got
to have a crew that's willing to stand behind you. And
one click.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go there. I mean, you know,
it's okay. I can.
Jamie's not here. I was going to give you a break this week, but you know, I don't want to be a dick. Do you think that the Missouri thing, I think this kind of stuff sets a precedent. While I don't know off the top of my head if there's any other states that have done it, I saw that, and knowing what I know about the Midwest and state laws related to regulation of pro lines, there's really not any that have been singled out.
Well, the only thing I can say is like personal knowledge of what I've been through this year dealing with Iowa. Iowa's completely changed their laws. So in January 22nd of this year, they rewrote all their firework laws. They call 0431 theatrical pyrotechnics. So not only has that changed, but the law that when you read it talks about firework displays, but they don't go into depth of what that means by a firework display. It just says, if you shoot a fireworks display, you have to have this insurance, bodily, building, and overall cost. And you have to be, it says by a competent person. But the weird thing is in Iowa, you don't need any kind of state license to shoot a show. So I could live in Iowa. I can go there, start a business. As long as I have insurance and a business, I can go out and shoot 1-4 shows and start a business just like that. No problem. To get my 1-3 through them, I just need to get a 54, start my own business, and I don't need any kind of permission through them for a separate shooter's license. I can just do it, which is kind of crazy because it's open to that point. Isn't it nuts?
Yeah,
there's only 4
nuts.
towns in Iowa that require a PGI certification to shoot a show in that town.
Huh.
That's all that's required for training. So, I mean, really, I could get if I knew nothing about fireworks, I could get my 54 in January, start a business in February, get contracts for the 4th, and shoot my very first fireworks ever with nothing, no training, no nothing, never done anything. But the fireworks display part scares me.
Competency it's crazy that that's undefined. You know,
what's professional? What's competent?
Yeah, right. How is professional defined? How is competent defined? Because if there's no real definitions for those words, then it's like, what does that mean? Because like, put that in the hands of a lawyer.
Is he drunk? No. Okay, he's competent.
Yeah,
I mean, what do you do? What does that mean? But the display thing is what really worries me on there, because if you read it, the way it's read, and I've talked to a fire marshal in Iowa to try to get his definition on it, which he's still lost on it, which is kind of funny, is, you know, it says firework display. Well, that means if you have 2 people in your backyard and you're shooting fireworks off in your backyard, I mean, you're shooting a display, right? Well, that means that you need insurance for 1-4 product that you bought at a tent. I don't know if they wrote the words wrong and meant to say display fireworks instead of they reversed it with fireworks display. And
that's crazy for a state where 1-4 is legal.
Well, yeah, but they just became legal a few years ago, so it's still a learning process. And before, their law was like there was barely anything. Once it became legal, I couldn't find any of this information. But when you go on there now, it's God, I want to say the code just in case someone from Iowa is listening. They can look it up themselves. Let me give them the code. Hold on, I got it right here. Where is it? Iowa code 727-2. What that explains, they pretty much took everything like from APA writings and threw it into their code and then succeeded some of that stuff.
Is it based on...
Oh, it's word for word on some of it.
NFPA 1126 and 23.
Yeah, it says right here, excuse me, 727-2 fireworks definitions for purposes of this section. Consumer fireworks, and it talks about includes first class consumer, blah, blah, blah. But then it says in Chapter 3 of the American Pyrotechnics Association Standard 87-1 are display fireworks enumerated in Chapter 4 of American Display or Pyrotechnics Association 87-1. So they mention the APA constantly in their main opening sentence to all their laws. And then once you get into the actual like definitions of fireworks and their purposes and such, it's pretty much the same wording from APA's wording. They just copy and pasted it in there. Like types of consumer fireworks, they talk about, fountains, they talk about spinners, wheels, toys, missiles, all that kind of stuff. They really got into definitions of all of these kinds of fireworks. The 60-gram cans are in there. What they call chasers, firecrackers, those are all in there. Snakes and glowworms. Like they really went through all of this stuff and defined it all into their own law. For instance, here they talk about multiple tube devices are normally limited to maximum of 200 grams of total pyrotechnic composition. UN 033614, our Article of Pyrotechnics UN 0431. So the weird part, like I said, though, is they call that our Article of Pyrotechnics UN 0431, but later down the road, they call it theatrical effects. And that's where they leave it. And all it says on there is...
That almost sounds similar to what Peter was saying for Missouri, right? How they took it and essentially lumped it in.
Yeah, defined it how they wanted it to.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Right.
So it says here, theatrical pyrotechnics that are approved by UN 0431, 14G shall not bear a warning label that resembles and required wording on consumer fireworks devices. A warning label providing instructions to a trained operator is permitted, but alternate wording must be used. Theatrical pyrotechnics may or may not have an ignition device attached. All requests for approval of device of article of pyrotechnics shall be accompanied by a signed certification stating that the article is intended for professional use in an entertainment industry and may not be offered for sale to the general public. That's the part that scared me right there. It's like, so am I considered the general public, even though I have a PGI cert to purchase that kind of stuff? And it says there instantly, the entertainment industry. That's not a hobbyist. That'd be a business.
Right. That's kind of a goofy insertion.
That's what I mean. They worded stuff weird.
Yeah, that seems really odd because you're assuming that it has a very, very specific
use
application.
I mean, that sounds like stage effects. That's exactly, if you're doing it for entertainment purposes. Well, I mean, technically a 14G cake is entertainment purposes. What else would you call that thing? Mm-hmm. You just light it and go, I'm not having fun. It's not entertaining. I just spent the $50 for nothing. So I said, just reading this law, and as long as it was knowledgeable. It was nice to be able to get this knowledge and see it like portrayed in the way it is, but it had me questioning a lot of it because when you read it, well, the person that wrote it, do they shoot fireworks? Do they know anything about fireworks? Or did they use their lawyers and add words in and go, we're just going to put this in here and this sounds good. This covers us kind of thing.
The UN 0431 definition that you threw out for the most part until you get to the part where they, very specifically talk about one particular application, that was pretty fleshed out to me. Did you feel the same way when you read that?
No, I mean, it made sense, but I'm talking about like the entertainment purposes part and like, making it sound like it was a business and a general public. Like that was like, wait a minute. That's not totally true of how it's viewed right now with everybody. So I'm surprised to hear it mentioned by name. And it almost makes me curious. How many more states specifically offer up any kind of language and reference at all to that product class?
I cannot imagine a lot of them even make mention of 0336 for pro use only because it's so new and now so legacy. But that's what I worry about precedent being set with Missouri is, are they going to take that product class and, because they verbally more or less said, hey, we're going to write this into new law and say that UN 0336 for pro use only is getting lumped in with 0431.
Yeah. I mean, like we said with Peter, it's coming to the way it pretty much reads in Iowa right now. I mean, Iowa and Missouri is it's the same classification as 1.3 to purchase it. To get the same fireworks that you used to be able to get any day of the week with a PGI class or a safety class of some kind, you could get, but now no longer. You need the same qualifications to buy that 12-inch shell as you do need to buy that 22 millimeter mine. Mm-hmm. What? Yeah. What?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so, and the parts of it, it's kind of scary too, because I think Peter brought up a good thing too, is bringing up, other people that are hobbyists will get that license. Okay. Well, now you're opening a door for these people to get into bigger stuff. If you're allowing that, there's a few, I'm sure, that are out there and be like, oh, you know what? I'll shoot an 8-inch in my backyard now. I can get away with it because I can buy it. I mean, it's out there. It's possible.
Yeah, I don't know. Not
every hobbyist is safe.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Stupid exists any way you swing it. Like if somebody can sit down and pass a test or get the appropriate license in a state, go out or even a federal license in your ATF and go out and buy stuff and shoot it in the wrong place. And you're at the whim of the jurisdiction that you're in anyway. So I know in the state of Indiana, they don't have like a specific shooter's license. State of Ohio has a shooter's license and like a permit application process, the whole 9 yards. Yeah, I know there's states out there that don't necessarily have those really stringent application and permit processes for display fireworks.
Yeah. Wisconsin, Iowa,
Kentucky, I think. But I don't know what the specifics are in those states, but you do wonder, is it totally possible that, product's going to make its way into the hands of somebody and they're going to do something stupid with it? Sure. Absolutely. But, I try to look at situations like that and keep an optimistic mindset. Everybody's so connected and networked now in pyro that it doesn't take much to enable somebody that's brand new to this stuff to go out and do something new and feel like they're making progress in their pyro career. A lot of guys come in from the hobbyist stuff, they go off into display fireworks and they never look back. I guess the point that I'm trying to make though, in the end, is I want to keep an open mind and I want to feel like new people that are getting into it. Sure, there's going to be people that are going to push away from the table and go, nah, it's getting too regulated. I'm done. I'm not even going to mess around with it. But inversely, I think that it's really not as difficult as it used to seem to get licensed and do things legally.
But I don't know, for instance, for me, like dealing with all this stuff in Iowa and learning all this stuff, I'm not going to get licensed to do that show. I'm going to walk away from it. I don't need that headache. I did it for fun. And if it has to do with a headache and cause me all that trouble, have to figure stuff out, why would I make something fun into work?
Do you think part of that could be because there isn't really a network out there and you're having to do all of that legwork yourself? Because that is daunting, dude. That's insanely daunting to have to go into it blind and do all of that research on your own and figure things out. Having the club scenes and having mentors and having people that have gone through the processes, which a lot of these states have. Like Missouri's got a huge network of folks like Mo Pyro and KCAP. Everybody's willing to open their door and teach you anything and everything when it comes to getting licensed and doing all this stuff and like being super enabling. Do you feel like because that doesn't really exist in Iowa, that kind of adds to your frustration?
I've never really looked up to see if there's an Iowa club now that I think about it. But again, I live in Illinois, so Iowa's just where I do that show with my family. It's always just been that tradition kind of thing. But I guess where I was going with that is more of, again, you don't need a license to shoot there. So to do the show that I do with 1-4, the way the law reads now, I need to have a permit and insurance, and that's it. But who do I get insurance from? There's only so many people that do ship shows, and then you're limited to who you buy from, and that's all the product you can get. So then that takes away your creativity at that point. Now I can't source from this person and that person and this person and enjoy all of that stuff in one show. No, it's like, here's where I buy my product from because that's where I get my insurance from. And then you're limited to, again, your abilities. You limit yourself to being creative.
I'd like to watch you drink a tiny cup of tea. I bet you drink it with your pinky up in the air.
No, that's Jim. Jim does that.
That's Jim. Yeah, plus, I know what you're saying. I get it, dude. I completely understand that. You see one product that just rocks the block in the sense that it's awesome, and it just is screaming at you to insert itself into a pyro musical, and you're like, oh, I can't get that because that vendor doesn't offer a ship show, so I just can't do it.
And will that create more companies to start doing ship show again? Because I know there's a lot of companies that got out of that. Would this cause people to go back into it? And I really doubt it, because for them, it's just more of a liability. And because you got to trust that person that they're only putting that product in that show. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. What about you? Like, how, if it comes down to the same thing for the lake show, what would you do? Your license, obviously, but you know how much insurance would cost for a show like that?
Yeah, it's quite a lot.
And you're going to be like, no.
Like
I'll go buy a car
show.
instead.
Yeah, right. Backyard shows in general. If I can do it the right way, I'm going to do it the right way. But there are shows where you feel like every fiber in the universe is kind of working against you. If 1-4 is legal, stick to 1-4. The gray area doesn't even exist anymore, and it finally does become black and white with ProLine. Then it's like, well, I don't know. I can't really see myself continuing to do the lake show, just because it's like I want to do things the right way. And my dad, I think he'll continue to do it because he's like that's dad, and that's how he operates. But
he doesn't use ProLine, so technically that's still legal.
Right. Yeah. I don't know, man. It's this whole thing.
Not only that, but like think of everything that we
uncomfortable.
Own. Everything that we own too. Unless you start joining someone else to shoot stuff, then your equipment doesn't get used, and then what? It's just sitting there collecting dust. You get to use it on your club events and things like that, but you'll never be truly happy, because that show for you, that's your one show a year that you can do whatever you want and be creative in how you feel about yourself. There's nobody telling you what to do, kind of thing.
Right.
And that's where I was saying earlier, it takes your creativity away, where that was you. And now somebody's telling you can't be you no more. Yeah. You can do it through these people and kind of be you, but you can't be you.
Yeah. This is the constant uncomfortable topic that's probably not going to get any more comfortable. It's just going to continue to flush itself out, and we'll see what happens.
I already think we already all know where it's going, man. It's been the same story, and it just gets more and more confirmation going along. It just keeps getting...
I think so too.
Today in Pyro News.
Okay, that's it for Pyro News. To be completely honest with you, I don't think we have any voicemails this week. Oh, you know what? This was the perfect episode for this. I'm going to play it in retrospect. This was perfect. I can't believe I missed this.
Hola amigos, this is Fireworks Advices Luis Alfredo. Sit down, grab your pillow, and enjoy a siesta while we tell you about how his way of doing things is muy superioso, okay?
It's one click,
If you could see me dancing over here.
It's just one click, It's not more than one click, or it's not click, two clicks, not 5 clicks, not 10 clicks.
It's okay, my friend.
Is you loco? Or what, man? All right. Yeah, we don't have any voicemails this week, and
So what was I supposed to talk about that
Well, you did. So well. That's why I said I played it in retrospect, because you gave a lot of great advice. So I figured, what the hell? I just looked up the soundboard and I'm like, wow, I bit that one hardcore. Totally.
I had good advice. I'm shocked. I got complimented. Woohoo!
Yeah. You got a compliment. All right, that's it. Peter, thank you for joining us. It was fun. I look forward to meeting you in person one day. I'm quite sure that we've been on the same shoot site probably more than 2 or 3 times, and we've just never talked.
It's busy, man.
Yeah, I know.
I don't think there's been a place we've been to in the last few years where we're just enjoying the event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't think that's ever going to end, sadly. Dana sent me a message. He wants to do the blind pyro. He wants to do the blind pyro one year. I told him that we should do a Bret Hart show from since he's from Canada. Calgary, Alberta, baby. All right, I think that's it. We're done. Stop talking about it.
You stop talking about it.
Go find Jamie. Tell him to stop talking about it. Stop talking about it, Jamie. Give me a sticker. Give me one of those stickers.
Kick him in the balls, you get 2.
Yeah.
Or all of them as he drops them.
I know what's going to happen is he's going to run out. He's going to run out really quick. And then everybody's going to say, they're going to scream at him. They say, hey, it's that guy. Hey, stop talking about it. Give me a sticker. And then he's going to go, I'm sorry, I don't have any left. And then they're going to get mad.
And then kick him in the balls.
They're going to get mad. Hey, you know that dude that shoots lasers from his eyes? That ad's full of shit, man. He doesn't actually have these stickers.
Shoots lasers from his eyes.
The dude that shoots lasers from his eyes, it's all bullshit. There's no stickers.
Oh my God.